All right, welcome. Today I have on the channel a very special guest, my good friend and teacher, mentor, Andy Cohen, all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. How you doing, Andy?
How's it any better? I'd be in jail.
All right.
There you go.
All right. Today we got a really cool topic to talk about. We're going to talk about a musician who I think is really underappreciated, and a lot of you probably haven't heard of him, but he spent quite a bit of time in Chicago. His name is Jim Brewer, and Andy's involved in a new album that just came out, Take It Easy, Greasy, which is really great. And we're going to be talking more about the details of that album a little bit later, but I want to start off, and Andy, tell us a little bit about Jim Brewer. Now, you've got some really cool, you spent some time personally with Jim Brewer, but you also know quite a bit about his history. Tell us a little bit about Jim Brewer.
Well, I was honored to know him. I met him in 1965 when I was a sophomore at University of Illinois, down in Champaign there. He came down with his friend Albert Hollands, whom he taught to play note for note exactly like he did. The two of them would just, play everywhere. Jim was blind. He wasn't sighted, so Albert was, and Albert had a Cadillac and a good job, and he really liked playing guitar, and he was from Mississippi too, and the two of them got along, so they went everywhere together. They went to Maxwell Street together. They played on Maxwell Street, and they played downstate, and wherever Jim could get a job, Albert Hollands would take him.
Cool.
They would load their amps up to go to Maxwell Street. Now, bear in mind, Jim was born 1920, and he came to Chicago in 1940, following his family, who came north looking for work. They came from Brookhaven, Mississippi. Jim's pop was a barber who played blues and played guitar, and he taught Jim how to play guitar. And his mom sang gospel music.
There's a lot of interesting intersections, I think, in Jim Brewer's path and career and stuff. But one of the most interesting ones is that Maxwell Street connection. Now, I know he spent quite a bit of time with like Arvella Gray too. Who was another Maxwell Street.
He taught Arvella Gray how to play guitar after Arvella was blinded in a holdup. He was shot,
right,
and the shot blinded him. So. He said, Arvella Gray wasn't all that much of a musician, but he played enough to be able to play on the street and walk up and down in front of the Jazz Record Mart in 7 West Grand there, all during the 50s and 60s. That's how he made his living, that and Maxwell Street. Maxwell Street was a hotbed. Maxwell Street was where everybody landed in the old redlining days. In the beginning redlining days in the 1890s, it was a Jewish neighborhood. As the Jews became, solidified as citizens and more solid jobs, they would move out to the western suburbs, and people coming up through the Great Migration settled there. And I understand it's now more or less Hispanic neighborhood.
So another interesting intersection is you were telling me that some folks heard Jim play at Maxwell Street, and then I think they invited him to come and play in Evanston, which was kind of him getting into this kind of folk scene. So talk about that a little bit, the intersection of sort of blues and the folk scene of the time.
Okay, well, let me try and sew all this together. Jim, in my experience of him, understood himself to be a tradition bearer, someone who was looked on favorably by folklorists as being an authentic culture bearer of the culture that they grew up in. Jim was born in 1920. He came up here in 1940, almost immediately gravitated to Maxwell Street, which was even then a hotbed of second-hand commerce. It was
Right.
Maxwell Street wasn't just one layer of stalls out on one street. It was a 6-square-block area.
Yeah.
Where people from all over the South Side and, you know, as far down as the University of Chicago, down in Hyde Park, people would come up there.
You could buy
Maxwell
rusty
Street.
Nails there.
Yes, you could buy rusty nails there. Rusty nails of several kinds. You could if it existed and if it was for sale, you could find it on Maxwell Street.
Right.
Jim was highly respected craftsman. If you didn't know a lick, Jim probably knew it, and he could show you. And he'd play it for you, and he'd show you how it went. One time he was playing with he was opening for Junior Wells's band. They came up to him after his set, and they said, "How do you do that all? I'm playing the bass, he's playing the drums, he's playing the guitar, but you're doing all three at once. How do you do that?" he says he just grew up doing it.
It's called fingerpicking, right?
It's called fingerpicking. It's called a lot of things. It has a lot of regional names.
Yeah.
And Jim was good at all of them.
Yeah.
Jim had ears. He was an ear player. But he was interested also. He was a tinkerer.
Yeah.
I got him into trouble more than once, but he tried to keep up with technology. He had a couple of cassette recorders that he could double track on back and forth.
Oh, nice. I used to do that. Yeah, if you have two of them, you can play with the one playing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He used to do that. He could fix lamps, He could wire a lamp.
Wow.
Nice. He had enough vision to do that, and he knew he could manipulate screwdrivers and so one time that it got him into trouble and almost ended his career because a couple of guys, he lived down on the south side somewhere around Kedzie, 3600 down south and 3200 west. And he would go, that was where he and his blind wife lived. And one day a couple of guys come knocking on the door, say they're from the city and they're checking for roaches. You have a hammer you could loan us so we could tap the walls. So he opens his toolkit and he gives them a hammer. The guy turns around, whacks him on the back of the head. And Jim made short work of both of them. He was very strong. And he brooked no disagreements of that sort. So, but then by then he'd gotten worked up so angry and adrenalized that he slammed the lid of the toolbox down on the little finger of his left hand.
Yikes.
And busted the second digit. So that when he finally did get to the hospital, crying and bawling, and he didn't have the presence of mind to say, "I'm a musician, you have to save the finger."
Right.
They took out about half, 1.5 joints.
Yikes.
And left him with a flap of skin. This was in 1971. This record came out because somebody approached Michael Frank, CEO of Earwig Records. They had a tape of Jim Brewer playing at a house concert in 1966, 5 years before the home invasion. And I said to Michael, grab it. Because before, Jim was a very good player, even with 3.5 fingers. But I knew him when he had 4 fingers. And he was a supreme player then. There are half a dozen tracks on this CD. Take It Easy, Greasy. From that house concert.
Nice.
And then there are a number of tracks from the 70s and 80s.
Right.
There's some tracks from the Traveling Blues Review that Michael and I assembled that took across the country.
Right.
To Vancouver and then back.
Right. And some of these tracks have Dan Smith, great harmonica player.
Wonderful harmonica
as
player.
well. So that's a real treat to hear some unreleased material from him as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has Jim playing Autoharp. Jim was as much a student as he was kind of a professor where his station was.
Yeah.
He was the referent guitar player down on Maxwell Street. If you needed to know how to do something, Jim would probably know how to do it.
Right, right.
So, people like Maxwell Street Jimmy and Honey Boy and other people that played guitar on Maxwell Street, they refer to him.
Right. So, I really think of course, I got into Jim Brewer because you lent me one of his albums, and I listened to it and I was like, yeah, because I liked he had a percussive, aggressive, a rhythmic approach, and I love rhythmic, highly rhythmic guitar sounds and styles. Yeah. But tell me a little bit about, he also played the Autoharp. So how did he get into the Autoharp?
I think it was by accident.
Okay.
One of the gigs I arranged for him, we were the entertainment at a reciprocating late 19th century steam engine gathering.
Okay. Interesting gig.
Near Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where Punxsutawney Phil lives. And so I brought him there, and my bass player, a woman named Pat Wilcox, she opened the door to let us in, and he sees this zither-looking thing on the wall hanging in front of him. He says, "What's that?" And Pat walks over to him, brings it to him, and he says, "That's an Autoharp." And he goes, he takes the Autoharp. She shows him how to hold it, so he holds it like that, and he presses one of the buttons down, and he goes, flang, flang, and he was playing blues on the thing.
So he just picked it up.
He just picked it up and learned how to play it in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So that when he went back to Chicago after this particular tour, he walked around Maxwell Street till he found him a chroma harp, and he bought it for $20, and he brought it with him on the Traveling Blues Review tour.
That's funny because I don't usually associate blues guy from Mississippi with
Jim
the Autoharp.
Was a musician.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There are players, and then there are musicianers.
Right.
And Jim was a damn musicianer.
Yeah.
He thought about music. It was the language he thought primarily in. He wanted to be a polished player. He emulated the hits. He knew most of the hits from probably about 1930 or so on.
Right.
And I know that came his neighborhood. He played with lots of people. He came from a musical area. Brookhaven is where Little Brother Montgomery came from, and where a fiddle and guitar duet championship. They won all the fiddle contests down there. The Strickland brothers. Let me tell you this one story about a gig that I got for the two of us. I don't know. I didn't know how I finagled it. I heard that there was a Chitlin Circuit Club in Rochester, New York, and I had Jim coming out to Café Lena and a couple of other places, and so I called him up and I said, I'm representing myself and my friend Jim Brewer. Yeah. He's a blind guy from Maxwell Street in Chicago. They hired us to open for B.B. King. And so we went there, and I did my little 15-minute set. And the chick singer came out, and the band backed her up, and then after a while, B.B. came out and he did his set, and there was a break. During the break, Jim says, "Take me in to see B.B." So I walked him in to see B.B., knocked on the door, "Come in." The door opens, there's B.B. sitting with a big plate of, food and stuff. "Mr. Brewer, how nice of you to visit me. I met you when I went through Brookhaven when I was just a kid, and I saw you playing, and so I'm very glad that you're here and opening up for me, and I give you all respect."
Wow.
So at this point, they start to get into it. Jim says, "Mr. King, can I have your autograph? Here's my autograph. Here's my personal telephone number, my manager's telephone number. You need anything, you call me." Jim says, "Would you like my autograph?" B.B. King says, "Mr. Brewer, I would be honored." He hands him a pen, a little pad of paper. J-I-M. I could have cried.
Wow.
So it's such a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
For both of them and for me.
Right.
That's why I do this.
Yeah, the respect and stuff is amazing.
That's why it's the reason why I had no problem schlepping old blind guys around the country for 35 years.
Right. So I know you got to spend some time actually touring, traveling with Jim Brewer and a bunch of other amazing blues musicians in a thing called the Traveling Blues Review. Tell me a little bit about what the Traveling Blues Review was and what it was like to be on this tour.
It was an idea I had. Michael was promoting the Kansas City Red Blues Band at the time.
Michael Frank
of Earwig Records. Yeah. And I was into promoting Jim and Reverend Dan, and
Dan Smith, harmonica player,
yeah. And I knew some other guys, Frisk Holloway and John D. Holman from North Carolina.
Nice.
And so we figured, I told Michael, if I had a Winnebago, and all of the blues guys we know, I could put together a tour. And Michael says, "When I get a Winnebago, I'll call you up." So about 8 months later, he calls me up and he says, "Start booking." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I got a Winnebago."
Now,
his dad gave him a Winnebago.
Now, who else was on the tour then besides who you
Kansas City Red Blues Band featuring Honey Boy Edwards, Frank Frost, Mad Dog Lester, and there was a bass player, I forget, Willie something. Michael knows his name. Frisk Holloway and John D. Holman from North Carolina, they drove in.
Wow.
They drove in John D.'s Cadillac, and they left it at my house in Brady Lake, and the three of us went in my Dodge van to Chicago.
Nice.
So the Dodge van and the Winnebago, always full, both of them, went traveling out. We played some gigs the anchor gigs were the Winnipeg Folk Festival and the Vancouver Festival. And then we had some gigs coming on the way back, and we had some, at points we would break up into smaller units and come back together.
What was it like traveling with Jim Brewer?
It was
on
crazy.
that tour? Yeah, it's a lot of people to manage.
Jim actually liked to travel.
Yeah.
And so did Reverend Dan. They both liked they were both fond of folkies. They'd been playing folky gigs, ever since they both come up north.
Right.
And so Jim was familiar with the sort of revivalist orientation. Okay, and he got into it. He would tell you stories about his early years readily, and he talked about the people that he knew on Maxwell Street and back home. He talked about his influences. And he liked instruments. He liked instruments. One time we went to, I think it was the Kenyon Festival, Howard Sachs's festival down there at Kenyon College, and he ran into a hammer dulcimer, and he started looking at it and plunking it, and he figured out how it worked. Just the same way that he figured out how an Autoharp worked.
Nice.
Nice. To him, he understood he had a good feeling for the theory of stringed instruments. He understood them.
So I did want to mention a couple other albums. There's not a lot of recordings of Jim Brewer, but this is the one that you lent me this a long time ago. I think you said you better bring that back when you lent me the album. But I got into a tune called "She Wants to Boogie" out here that I just loved, and I loved the aggressive, punchy sound he got. And so this was on the Philo Records. Is that what this was? Philo. Okay. Philo Records, and that was probably the first full-length album that came out. And then your good friend and my friend as well, Michael Frank of Earwig Records, put this one out a while back. Yeah, and once again, of course, we got the Take It Easy, Greasy, really great album, man. I'm so glad you guys put this thing out. So yeah, I guess I feel a little bit of a connection to Jim Brewer because he spent a lot of time in Chicago, and also because he played at a pretty well-known Chicago folk venue, the No Exit Café, that I played at a bunch of times. Tell me about his connection to the No Exit Café.
That's another gig he got through people coming down to shop at Maxwell Street. One of the No Exit was the creature of Joe and JoJo Moore.
Okay.
It was at the corner 6900, 6901.
Glenwood, I think. Yeah, something like that. Right around there, yeah.
A block from the Ravenswood station.
Right.
And it was an art gallery and cabaret, and he had music 6 or 7 days a week. Peter Adamovich played flamenco guitar on Monday, and Judy Bright sang country songs on Tuesday. Jim Brewer played his blues on Wednesday. Art Theme did whatever he did on Thursday, and then there would be somebody on Friday and Saturday. So it was...
I missed that era. If I was, I would have been there every day, I think.
Betcha.
It sounds like a great
it was a great
education.
Place.
Yeah,
it was a great place. It's a place where I learned to appreciate petty fours. They had good coffee and good conversation. You could play chess there. It was the classic great good place.
Yeah. Well, once again, thanks so much for coming on the channel and for sharing sharing some of your stories about Jim Brewer. There's just so much to tell. But once again, that new record is Take It Easy, Greasy, and it's a collaboration between Earwig Records and Riverlark Records, and it's a really good one. I've listened to it several times, and yeah, if you want to hear really just rhythmic guitar playing that, like you said, crosses a lot of different kind of genres in a way, folk, blues, all these gospel, all these different things. It's just some great stuff. And the Dan Smith harmonica is a bonus too. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Andy. It's great to have you on.